Imagine one of the most calculating fictional characters, composed, methodical, and invisible. A top student at an elite school, this baby-faced individual chose to bring that dark fiction into the core of reality. He found numerous reasons to cast a shadow over someone's future, sometimes a rejection, sometimes deep-seated jealousy, and at other times, a pen moved just a few millimeters on his desk was enough. He lived like a shadow, utilizing self-designed technological tracking systems and wilderness survival skills. Today, we open the case file of Atalay Filiz, the man the entire country followed with bated breath as the Turkish Dexter. To ensure you don't miss exclusive crime files and in-depth analyses, subscribe to First Degree Guilty. Now, we return to those early years where this baby-faced mind began its descent into darkness. It all began on June 2, 1986, in a family where discipline and achievement were paramount. His father was a colonel who served long years in the Air Force and later became a respected pilot for Turkish Airlines. Within this academic and disciplined atmosphere, Atalay excelled as a student. He graduated third in his class from one of Turkey's most established and prestigious high schools. From the outside, he was the portrait of a promising young man. However, in the shadow of this brilliant academic success, there was another personality that unsettled those around him. In his high school yearbook, classmates used adjectives like abnormal, strange, and creepy to describe him. His peers openly expressed their unease regarding his unpredictable behavior and disregard for rules. Years later, in his official statement, he would claim that he received secret messages from newspapers during that period, which drove him toward irrational actions. Perhaps the most striking detail was hidden in a photograph taken during those years. Unlike the other students, Atalay chose to be photographed with a screen behind him featuring Hannibal Lecter, one of cinema's most iconic and calculating fictional characters. This was more than a film preference. It was the first symbolic signal of the complex and cold world he would later construct. A note from a classmate in the yearbook was almost prophetic. "I have no doubt you will continue to terrify me with your extraordinary actions in the future." When Atalay graduated from high school, his father wanted him to continue his education in Turkey to remain under the umbrella of family discipline. But Atalay had a single goal: to escape this control and go as far away as possible. He chose a high-risk and deceptive path to break his father's pressure. During the university entrance exams in 2005, despite having the capacity to achieve a top score, he deliberately marked every answer incorrectly. This calculated move of failure worked, and Atalay was not placed in any university in Turkey. Left with no other choice, his father had to send him to Paris, France, in 2006 to continue his studies. For Atalay, this was not just a change of school, it was the opening of a door to an uncontrolled life, thousands of miles away from his family, where no one could tell him what to do. Atalay's life in Paris was a far cry from his disciplined days in Turkey. While his family believed he was studying biology in laboratories, Atalay rarely attended classes, spending his time simply living in Paris. During this time, he stayed with Göktürk, the son of one of his father's friends. Meeting Olga, who came from Russia in 2008, marked the beginning of the long and complex process that would change everything. After some time, Olga's friend Elena joined the group, and a relationship began between Göktürk and Elena. In 2011, Atalay proposed to Olga, but he received an unexpected and firm no. Immediately after this rejection, Olga ended the relationship entirely. This event was the actual breaking point that deactivated the control mechanisms in Atalay's mind and awakened the obsessive character within. Atalay had no intention of letting Olga go and asked to meet her in hopes of a reconciliation. At the time, Olga was working as a nanny for a local family. On December 16th, she left the house saying, "I'm going to meet a friend," and was never heard from again. The police investigation yielded no results. Not a single trace of Olga remained. Shortly after this incident, Atalay returned to Turkey, leaving behind a massive question mark. Göktürk and Elena's relationship continued in Turkey after their time in Paris. However, that shadow over their lives, Atalay, was still out there somewhere. The couple had severed all ties with him, as they held Atalay responsible for what happened to Olga. Instead of accepting this, Atalay developed a pathological obsession with both of them. He had Göktuğ's phone number but did not know where they lived. To reach them, he prepared a simple but effective ruse. He called Göktuğ, identifying himself as a courier, and asked for his current home address under the pretext of an error in the delivery information. Like many people would, Göktuğ suspected nothing and provided his address. Days passed, but the expected package never arrived. The person on the other end of the line was not a courier, but Atalay, identifying the location of his targets. Learning the address was only the beginning. Like the examples in his fictional world, he wanted to establish a cold-blooded surveillance mechanism. He connected a mobile phone to a custom battery setup designed to be powered by a vehicle's electrical system. To hide his identity in case of discovery, he scratched off the numbers on the SIM card and wrapped the device in a special coating to protect it from the elements. He was so meticulous that he didn't leave a single fingerprint on the device. Under the cover of darkness one night, he went to Göktuğ and Elena's house and secretly placed this device in their car. Now, thanks to the phone's location feature, he could track their every step and every place they visited live on his screen. Göktuğ and Elena were completely unaware that they were being followed step by step, even in front of their home, their safest place. On September 16, 2013, in Ankara, Atalay moved to the final stage of his plan. He disguised himself in women's clothing to avoid recognition and waited in front of Göktuğ and Elena's house with a shotgun hidden in a bag. As soon as the couple arrived home in their vehicle, Atalay approached them silently from behind and ended both of their lives in the ensuing attack. He fled the scene quickly, leaving behind significant confusion. Witnesses told the police the attacker was a woman. To Atalay, this was a flawless act, with every detail calculated and no traces left behind. However, this flawless picture soon began to dissolve. Detectives investigating the case managed to find the technical setup and the mobile phone hidden deep within Göktuğ's vehicle. Atalay had wiped the fingerprints and scratched the SIM card's tracking numbers, but he had made a vital error. While the information on the fake ID used to purchase the SIM card was fraudulent, the real photograph he provided to obtain the card revealed his true identity beyond doubt. Now, all units were pursuing the name Atalay Filiz, and his only option was to flee. Realizing he had been exposed, Atalay packed a suitcase, left the city center, and sought refuge in forested areas. With his interest in scouting since childhood and his curiosity about wilderness survival, he believed he could live away from people. But the harsh conditions of nature and the difficulty of surviving alone eventually forced him to change his plans. Deciding to return to civilization, he moved to another city to vanish into thin air. There he created a new identity and a new story for himself. His name was now Furkan. He went to a restaurant, claimed he was an orphan in a desperate situation, and asked for help, saying he only wanted to work. A teacher named Fatma, who ran the restaurant, took pity on his helpless state and gave him a chance. She didn't just give him a job. Upon learning he had nowhere to stay, she assigned him a room at the back of the restaurant. In this new life as Furkan, Atalay began living like a quiet neighbor, hiding his true identity even from those closest to him. Atalay stepped into a quiet and deep existence with his new identity. To his co-workers, he was just someone who did his job, quiet, reclusive, and someone who never sought intimacy. His employer, Fatma, was very helpful toward this young man she knew as Furkan. However, beneath this silence, the fragile world Atalay had built began to crack. After a while, Fatma noticed an inexplicable strangeness in Furkan's behavior. When she called him by his name, Atalay sometimes gave no reaction at all, as if he had never heard the name before. This planted a seed of doubt in Fatma's mind, and she began to observe the young man's movements more closely. Atalay was aware of this suspicion and that he was being watched. Specifically, he suspected that someone was secretly entering his room and going through his belongings. It was at this point that his methodical and obsessive intelligence was triggered again. Look closely at the photograph currently on the screen. At first glance, everything looks ordinary. Items seemingly left randomly on a desk, right? But in reality, there is a perfect trap here. The unusual vertical positioning of the pen and the lighter on the desk is no coincidence. Atalay had measured the position of every item on his desk and the distances between them down to the centimeter. His goal was to instantly detect if someone entered his room and touched his things. This silent alarm system unfortunately worked. While Atalay was away from his room, Fatma entered and began examining his belongings. However, this curious search resulted in a reality Fatma never expected. She learned that the quiet young man she knew as Furkan was actually the individual the entire country was searching for. This discovery would ignite the fuse of an irreversible tragedy for both Fatma and Atalay. When Fatma went to Atalay to confirm her suspicions, she was unaware that everything was about to change irrevocably. She said to him, "How's it going, Atalay?" These few words were Fatma's last. For Atalay, it was the end of his Furkan identity and the false world he had built. In the shock of his true identity being exposed, Atalay fatally assaulted Fatma with a knife. This time, he was determined not to leave an easily discoverable trace. He placed Fatma in a suitcase and, with immense composure, as if he were carrying his own belongings, he walked outside. He left the suitcase in a nearby wooded area and quickly fled the scene. However, the truth soon came to light. When Fatma's remains were found, Atalay became the #1 suspect sought by the entire nation. Television screens showed his photo day and night, and the public looked for that baby-faced name on every corner. His flight, which lasted for days, ended during a minibus journey. An observant passenger immediately recognized the face from the news and kept a suspicious eye on Atalay. Although Atalay realized he was being followed and changed vehicles, it was too late. The passenger had already called the police with the vehicle's license plate and direction. Upon his capture shortly after, the items found on Atalay provided dark clues into his mindset. Tapes of the series Dexter, of which he was a fan, and a list of names consisting of fair-skinned, blonde women who resembled Olga. During the trial process, Atalay attempted to give the impression that he was not of sound mind, claiming he received secret messages from the newspapers he read. However, this legal strategy found no traction. The court sentenced Atalay Filiz to aggravated life imprisonment without any reduction. Today, he continues to serve his sentence alone in a high-security prison cell. When we set aside the technical details and strategic moves of this file, what remains are voids that can never be filled and life stories left unfinished. Göktuğ Demirarslan and Elena Radchikova, who were torn from their dreams that began in Paris. Fatma Kayıkçı, a history teacher who always tried to be helpful to those around her, and Olga Seregina, of whom not a single trace has been found since 2011. The real reason we analyze this dark mindset and complex chain of events today is the deep respect we hold for the memories of these individuals, whose names are now more than just case files.